The Galactic Military Academy's orientation week was supposed to be straightforward. Representatives from 47 different species would gather on the neutral station orbiting Kepler 442b, learn basic protocols, and begin their journey toward becoming the galaxy's next generation of peacekeepers. What nobody expected was for the human representative to turn the entire program upside down within the first 3 days. Cadet Zix Thara adjusted her breathing apparatus for the 3rd time that morning. The Valerian's 4 lungs weren't quite adapted to the station's atmospheric mix, but she'd endured worse during her preliminary training on Vos Prime. Around her, dozens of other cadets moved through the corridors with varying degrees of comfort. The crystalline hegemony's representative, a living mineral formation called Shard's Singer of Depths, scraped along the floor with each step, leaving tiny crystal fragments in its wake. The gaseous nebula collective's cadet floated in a specialized containment suit, occasionally shifting between purple and green hues. Everyone was adapting, everyone except the humans. There was only one human cadet, which seemed odd to Zix Thara. Most species sent at least 3 representatives to the academy. The human stood near the orientation chamber's entrance, looking completely at ease in a way that somehow made everyone else more nervous. He was average height by galactic standards, maybe 2 meters tall, with brown hair and unremarkable features. What struck Zix Thara was how relaxed he appeared. While other cadets checked their environmental suits, adjusted gravity compensators, or recalibrated their breathing mixtures, the human just stood there in basic clothing. "Attention, cadets," Commander Veltar announced, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd seen combat across 6 different star systems. The Thaxian's blue-scaled hide gleamed under the artificial lights as she addressed the assembly. "Today we begin combat simulations in various gravitational environments. You'll be tested on worlds ranging from 0.3 standard gravity to 2.1 standard gravity." A collective rustle went through the crowd. Even the most physically robust species found high-gravity environments challenging. Zix Thara's own homeworld maintained 0.8 standard gravity, and she'd trained extensively to handle anything up to 1.4. The thought of 2.1 standard gravity made her breathing apparatus work overtime. "First simulation will be conducted at 1.5 standard gravity," Commander Veltar continued. "Squads will be assigned randomly. Mission parameters will be explained once you're planetside." The transport bay buzzed with nervous energy as cadets checked their equipment one final time. Zix Thara found herself assigned to Squad 7, along with Korath from the Hammer Worlds, Tweaky from the Songbird Collective, and the Human. She still didn't know his name. He'd introduced himself during orientation, but she'd been distracted by his lack of proper environmental gear. "I'm Marcus," the human said as they strapped into the drop shuttle. His voice was calm, almost conversational. "Looking forward to working with you all." Korath's mandibles clicked in what Zix Thara recognized as skepticism. The Hammer World's representative stood nearly 3 meters tall and massed probably 4 times what the human did. His species evolved on a high-gravity world where everything was built to endure crushing forces. "You realize we're heading into 1.5 standard gravity?" Korath's voice rumbled like distant thunder. "Your species didn't even list heavy world adaptations in your academy application." Marcus shrugged. "Should be fine." Tweaky chirped something in her native tongue that the universal translator rendered as profound concern. Her species evolved in low-gravity environments and required an extensive exoskeleton just to function in standard gravity. The thought of 1.5 standard gravity had her checking her suit's power cells for the dozenth time. The shuttle descended toward the training world's surface with a violence that spoke to the increased gravitational pull. Zix Thara felt her organs shift uncomfortably as the gravity field strengthened. Her breathing apparatus worked harder to circulate oxygen through her compressed lung system. Around her, other cadets made similar adjustments, Equipment hummed, servos whined, and environmental suits struggled to maintain optimal conditions. Marcus sat quietly, hands folded in his lap, looking out the viewport like he was on a sightseeing tour. The training world was brutal by design. Rocky terrain stretched toward distant mountains under a harsh yellow sun. The air was thick and oppressive, heavy with moisture that made every breath feel like drinking soup. Gravity pulled at everything with relentless insistence. Zixthara's first step off the shuttle nearly sent her tumbling, her usual gait completely wrong for the increased gravitational field. "Mission parameters are simple," Commander Veltar announced through their comm systems. "Navigate 15 kilometers of terrain, establish communication with base camp and return. Time limit is 8 hours. Any cadet requiring medical evacuation will be recycled back to preliminary training." Zixthara winced. Recycling was the Academy's polite term for academic failure. 8 hours to cover 30 kilometers in crushing gravity over hostile terrain while maintaining team cohesion and completing communication protocols. The mission was designed to push everyone to their absolute limits. Squad 7 began their march with Korath taking point. His heavy world physiology gave him an advantage, though even he moved more slowly than usual. His powered armor compensated for some of the gravitational stress, but the energy drain was enormous. Tweaky's exoskeleton whined constantly as its servos fought the increased gravity. Every step looked painful, but she pressed forward with determination that earned Zixthara's respect. Zixthara found her own rhythm after the first kilometer. Her breathing apparatus worked overtime, her 4-lung system struggling to process enough oxygen in the heavy atmosphere. Sweat gathered inside her environmental suit despite the climate control. The backpack full of equipment felt like it had doubled in mass, straps cutting into her shoulders. Marcus walked beside them like he was taking a casual stroll through a park. "How are you doing this?" Zixthara finally asked during their first rest break. The human wasn't even breathing hard. While everyone else checked equipment, redistributed gear weight, and recalibrated their environmental systems, Marcus sat on a rock and watched clouds move across the yellow sky. "Doing what?" Marcus asked. "The gravity," Tweaky chirped through her translator. "It should be crushing you." Marcus looked genuinely confused. "This is 1.5 standard gravity, right? That's what my homeworld measures." He stood up and stretched like he'd been sitting too long. "Earth's gravity is pretty much exactly standard. We calibrated the galactic standard based on the most common gravitational field among inhabited worlds. Turns out Earth fit right in the middle." Korath's mandibles clicked rapidly. "That's impossible. No species evolves to handle standard gravity perfectly. It's a mathematical average." "Maybe the math was wrong," Marcus suggested. He adjusted his basic field pack. No powered assistance, no environmental suit, just a simple backpack that any hiker might carry. "Or maybe Earth really is pretty average. We've got some mountains back home that are a lot more challenging than this." The second half of their march became an education in human physiology, while other squad members struggled increasingly with the gravitational stress. Marcus maintained his steady pace without apparent effort. He carried extra equipment when Tweaky's servos overheated. He helped Zixthara navigate difficult terrain when her breathing apparatus couldn't keep up with increased exertion. When Korath's powered armor began draining its energy cells faster than anticipated, Marcus suggested they could share some of his supplies. "You're not even tired," Zixthara observed as they approached the communication relay point. Marcus considered this. "I guess not really. This reminds me of hiking in Colorado. Beautiful terrain, decent weather, nice workout." He looked around at the harsh landscape that had been grinding down 36 other cadets all day. "Though the air's a bit thick." The communication protocols went smoothly. Marcus had memorized the technical specifications during the shuttle ride and handled the equipment like he'd been trained on it for months rather than hours. His steady hands and clear thinking made the entire process more efficient. The return journey revealed just how much the gravitational stress had affected the other squad members. Tweaky's exoskeleton finally gave out 2 kilometers from the shuttle, forcing her to move in short, painful bursts as backup systems struggled to function. Korath's armor was draining power so quickly that he had to disable non-essential systems. Zixthara's breathing apparatus was cycling at maximum capacity, her 4-lung system working harder than it ever had. Marcus carried Tweaky's equipment pack along with his own. He spotted for Korath when the bigger alien had to navigate difficult terrain with failing power assistance. He shared his water rations and somehow managed to keep everyone's morale up with casual conversation about Earth's hiking trails. They made it back to the shuttle with 40 minutes to spare. Other squads were still struggling across the terrain, their progress visible as slow-moving dots on the command display. Commander Veltar was waiting for them at the shuttle ramp. Her blue-scaled face showed something between confusion and concern. "Cadet Marcus," she said, "medical sensors indicate you experienced minimal physiological stress during today's exercise." Marcus nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Pleasant day for a walk." "A walk," Commander Veltar repeated slowly. "Yes, ma'am. Though I appreciate having good company," Marcus added, gesturing to his squad mates. "Made it more enjoyable." Korath slumped against the shuttle wall as his armor's systems powered down for maintenance. Tweaky was already connecting to charging stations to revive her exoskeleton. Zixthara was cycling her breathing apparatus through full maintenance mode. Marcus stood at attention, looking ready for another 15-kilometer hike. "Cadet Marcus," Commander Veltar said carefully, "tomorrow's exercise will be conducted at 2.1 standard gravity." "Looking forward to it, ma'am," Marcus replied. "Will we be covering similar terrain?" Word of yesterday's exercise had spread throughout the Academy station faster than gossip in a ship's mess hall. By morning, cadets from other squads were finding excuses to walk past Marcus during breakfast, stealing glances at the human who had apparently treated 1.5 standard gravity like a casual fitness routine. The rumors grew more elaborate with each retelling. Some claimed he'd carried all his squad mates back to the shuttle. Others insisted he'd completed the entire exercise in half the allotted time. Zixthara knew the truth was somehow more unsettling than the rumors. "Today's exercise location is designation Hammer 7, Commander Veltar announced to the assembled cadets. "Gravity measures 2.1 standard. Atmospheric composition is hostile to most species. Environmental suits are mandatory for all participants." The collective intake of breath was audible, even through various atmospheric processors and breathing apparatus. Hammer 7 was legendary among military training worlds, a place where even the Hammer world's heavy gravity specialists struggled. The planet's crushing gravitational field had broken more than one promising military career. "Mission parameters are more complex today," the commander continued. "Each squad will establish a forward observation post at designated coordinates. Distance to target is 12 kilometers through mountainous terrain. Once established, you'll maintain position for 4 hours while conducting surveillance protocols. Extraction will occur after successful mission completion." 12 kilometers didn't sound like much until you factored in 2.1 standard gravity and mountain climbing. Zixthara's breathing apparatus had been upgraded overnight with additional oxygen reserves, but she still doubted her ability to complete the mission. Around her, other cadets were making similar calculations and reaching similar conclusions. Squad 7 received their equipment manifest during the shuttle ride to Hammer 7. Standard load included environmental suits, climbing gear, surveillance equipment, emergency shelters, communication arrays, and enough supplies for a 6-hour mission with emergency reserves. The total equipment mass would challenge even healthy cadets in normal gravity. "This is going to hurt," Korath admitted as they reviewed the manifest. His powered armor had been overhauled overnight, energy cells replaced and servos upgraded, but 2.1 standard gravity would push even Hammer World's technology to its limits. Tweaky's exoskeleton had been completely rebuilt with industrial-grade components that looked more suited to construction work than military training. The new framework was bulkier, but theoretically capable of handling the gravitational stress. Theoretically. Terra wore her environmental suit like armor, every seal checked and double-checked. Her breathing apparatus now included backup systems and emergency reserves. She felt like a walking life support station. Marcus wore the same basic field gear he'd carried yesterday, plus a standard environmental suit that looked like it had come straight from the equipment locker without modification. The shuttle's descent to Hammer 7's surface was an experience in controlled violence. Gravity grabbed the craft and pulled with crushing insistence. Even secured in crash webbing, every occupant felt their internal organs shift as the gravitational field strengthened. Environmental suits activated automatically, servos whining as they struggled to maintain proper positioning against the increasing weight. Thera's first breath on Hammer 7 tasted like metal and regret. The air was thin despite being dense, full of industrial pollutants from ancient mining operations. Her suit's atmospheric processors worked overtime to maintain a breathable mix while fighting against the gravitational compression of her breathing apparatus. Marcus stepped off the shuttle and immediately began checking his equipment, not testing it under stress or verifying that systems could handle the gravitational load, just the routine equipment check any soldier might perform before a standard mission. "How does this feel normal to you?" Tweaky asked through her translator. Her new exoskeleton allowed basic movement, but every step looked like a monumental effort. "It doesn't feel normal," Marcus replied, adjusting his pack straps. "It's definitely heavier than Earth standard. I'd guess this is about twice what I'm used to." He looked around at the barren landscape stretching toward distant mountains. "But I've done some mountain climbing at altitude where the pack weight gets pretty extreme. This is manageable." Manageable. Korath's mandibles clicked in disbelief as his powered armor's systems struggled to compensate for the gravitational stress. Manageable was not the word any reasonable being would use to describe 2.1 standard gravity. The march toward their surveillance position became a masterclass in human endurance. While Squad 7's other members fought constantly against the crushing gravitational field, Marcus maintained a steady pace that seemed almost leisurely. His breathing remained controlled. His movements stayed fluid and efficient. When the terrain became challenging, he scouted ahead to find the easiest routes for his struggling squad mates. 3 kilometers into the march, Tweaky's upgraded exoskeleton began showing stress fractures. The industrial-grade components were holding, but hairline cracks appeared along joint housings where the gravitational load exceeded design specifications. "I can carry some of your equipment," Marcus offered during their first rest break. "You're already carrying extra gear," Terra pointed out. Marcus had quietly redistributed weight from everyone's packs, taking heavier items while leaving lighter but essential equipment with the others. "I've got room for more," Marcus said. He demonstrated by lifting Tweaky's surveillance equipment pack, a mass that should have required mechanical assistance in 2.1 standard gravity. Marcus lifted it with the casual ease of someone picking up groceries. Korath's armored sensors were tracking biometric data from all squad members. "Your heart rate is elevated but stable," he reported to Marcus. "Muscle tension indicates moderate exertion. These readings don't match the gravitational stress you should be experiencing." Marcus considered this. "Maybe humans handle gravity differently than your sensors expect. Earth's got some geographic variation in gravitational fields. Plus, we're pretty adaptable." He secured Tweaky's equipment to his own pack without apparent effort. "My great-grandfather used to tell stories about carrying 100-pound packs through mountain ranges at 12,000 feet elevation. This reminds me of those stories." The comparison was lost on aliens who measured atmospheric density in parts per million and calculated gravitational stress in precise decimals. Marcus spoke about extreme human endurance the way other species might discuss basic biological functions. 6 kilometers into the march, they encountered their first technical challenge. The designated route followed a ridgeline that required actual climbing, not just steep hiking, but technical rock climbing with full equipment loads in crushing gravity. Most squads were expected to use mechanical assistance or find alternate routes. The exercise parameters specifically mentioned that route modification was acceptable given the gravitational challenges. Marcus studied the cliff face like he was reading a map. "This is definitely technical climbing," he said. "But the rock looks solid, and there are good anchor points." He began unpacking climbing gear with the efficient movements of someone who'd done this many times before. "You can't be serious," Terra said. "That's a 60-meter vertical climb in 2.1 standard gravity while carrying full equipment loads." 62 meters, Marcus corrected after eyeballing the distance. "But the angle's not quite vertical, maybe 75 degrees average." He began setting up anchor points with practiced skill. "I'll establish the route and set fixed lines for everyone else." What followed challenged every assumption Terra had about human capabilities. Marcus climbed the cliff face with the deliberate efficiency of someone working through a familiar routine. His movements stayed controlled, despite the gravitational stress that should have made such climbing impossible. He established anchor points, set protective gear, and ran climbing ropes with textbook precision. 40 minutes later, Squad 7 was established on the ridgeline with a climbing system that would have impressed professional mountaineers. Marcus had effectively solved the technical challenge that was supposed to test their problem-solving abilities under extreme stress. "Your species is either much stronger than your initial assessments indicated," Korath observed as they continued toward their surveillance position, "or human definitions of standard differ significantly from galactic measurements." Marcus helped Tweaky navigate a difficult section of loose rock, steadying her when her damaged exoskeleton couldn't maintain proper balance. "Maybe both," he said. "Though this doesn't feel that different from some hiking I've done in Nepal. Higher altitude, similar terrain challenges, comparable pack weight when you factor in the gravity difference." Nepal was apparently a place on Earth. The casual way Marcus referenced it suggested that extreme endurance challenges were routine aspects of human recreation rather than specialized military training. The surveillance position required establishing a camouflaged observation post with clear sight lines to their target coordinates. In 2.1 standard gravity, setting up the required equipment should have been a grueling technical challenge requiring careful coordination and multiple rest breaks. Marcus had the surveillance array operational in 20 minutes. "These systems are pretty straightforward," he explained to his squad mates while calibrating the targeting sensors. Similar interface to some civilian photography equipment back home. His hands moved efficiently through the setup process, muscle memory adapting to equipment he'd never used before. Terra realized that Marcus wasn't just handling the gravitational stress. He was treating it as a minor inconvenience while focusing on mission requirements. While she and the others struggled to maintain basic functionality, Marcus was actually performing better than he had during yesterday's easier exercise. "Question," Tweaky chirped through her translator. "Yesterday you said 1.5 standard gravity matched your home world. Today you're performing even better in 2.1 standard gravity. How is this possible?" Marcus finished calibrating the communication array before answering. "I think I'm getting used to working in higher gravity," he said. "Yesterday felt like a normal workout. Today feels like a good workout. There's a difference. A good workout." Commander Veltar's voice came through their comm systems just as Marcus made this observation, requesting status updates from all squads. Most teams were still establishing their positions or dealing with equipment failures caused by gravitational stress. "Squad 7 operational," Marcus reported. "Surveillance position established. All systems functional. Mission timeline ahead of schedule." There was a long pause before Commander Veltar responded. Confirmed, Squad 7. Maintain position and continue surveillance protocols. The 4-hour surveillance period became an education in human efficiency. While other squad members rotated between active duty and rest periods to manage the gravitational stress, Marcus maintained consistent performance throughout the entire mission. He operated surveillance equipment, maintained communication protocols, and somehow found time to perform routine maintenance on everyone else's environmental systems. "You're fixing my breathing apparatus," Zixathara observed as Marcus adjusted her equipment's atmospheric processors. "Small leak in the secondary oxygen line," Marcus explained while working. "Easy fix if you catch it early. Could be dangerous if it develops into a system failure during extraction." Extraction meant climbing back down the cliff face and hiking 12 kilometers to the shuttle landing zone, in 2.1 standard gravity, after completing a 4-hour mission that had pushed everyone except Marcus to their operational limits. "How are we going to manage the return trip?" Tweaky asked. Her exoskeleton was showing multiple stress fractures, and her energy reserves were critically low. Marcus was already packing equipment with the same methodical efficiency he'd shown all day. "Same way we got here," he said. "Careful route planning, proper equipment management, good teamwork." He shouldered a pack that contained most of the squad's heavier equipment. "Plus, the shuttle ride home should be interesting." Interesting was not the word Zixathara would have chosen. The Academy's medical bay had never seen anything like the post-mission reports from Hammer 7. 37 cadets required various levels of medical attention ranging from gravitational stress syndrome to complete environmental system failure. 6 cadets had been forced to abort their missions due to equipment malfunctions that could have proved fatal. Emergency medical teams were still extracting 3 squads whose members had suffered complete physiological breakdown during the return march. Marcus was in the medical bay too, but only because regulations required post-mission medical evaluation for all cadets exposed to extreme gravitational environments. "Heart rate normal. Muscle tension within acceptable parameters. Hydration levels optimal. No signs of gravitational stress syndrome." Dr. Kethara's 4 eyes blinked independently as she reviewed Marcus's medical readings for the 3rd time. The Healers Guild representative had overseen thousands of military medical evaluations, but these readings challenged her understanding of biological adaptation. "How do you feel?" she asked Marcus, who was sitting on the examination platform looking like he'd just finished a mild workout. "Pretty good," Marcus replied honestly. "A little tired, but that's normal after a long day in the field. The climb down was actually easier than the climb up. Gravity helped with the descent." Dr. Kethara made notes that would probably be studied by xenobiologists for decades. "Cadet Marcus, your species' initial medical evaluation indicated baseline gravitational tolerance of 1.0 standard with adaptive capacity to 1.3 standard for limited duration. Today, you operated in 2.1 standard gravity for 8 hours while performing strenuous physical activity. These parameters don't match your biological profile." Marcus considered this. Maybe the initial evaluation was conservative. We humans tend to be careful about overstating our capabilities. He stretched, joints popping in a way that made Dr. Kethara's instruments register minor concern. "Plus, I think I'm getting better at this. Practice helps." Getting better at this. As if adapting to crushing gravitational fields was a skill that could be developed through casual practice rather than years of specialized training and genetic modification. "Doctor," Marcus said thoughtfully, "what's the highest gravity level used in academy training?" Dr. Kethara's 4 eyes focused on Marcus with sudden intensity. "Why do you ask?" "Just curious. Today was challenging but manageable. I'm wondering what the upper limits look like for advanced training." Challenging, but manageable. Dr. Kethara glanced at her readings again, comparing Marcus's post-mission vital signs to those of cadets who had barely survived the same exercise. The difference was so dramatic that she'd initially assumed her equipment was malfunctioning. Advanced combat training occasionally requires operations at 2.5 standard gravity, she said carefully. Such exercises are reserved for final-year cadets with specialized heavy world modifications and the most advanced environmental systems available. Marcus nodded like she'd mentioned an interesting hiking trail. That sounds like it would be a good workout. A good workout. Dr. Kethara decided that Marcus's medical file was going to require several addenda and possibly consultation with specialists from the Galactic Biological Survey. Meanwhile, word of Squad 7's performance was spreading beyond the medical bay. Commander Veltar found herself reviewing mission recordings with growing disbelief. Every squad had struggled with the gravitational challenges except one. Every squad had required extended mission timelines except one. Every squad had experienced equipment failures, personnel injuries, or mission modifications except one. Squad 7 had completed their surveillance mission 40 minutes ahead of schedule, established textbook-perfect observation posts, and returned to extraction with full marks on all performance criteria. According to the mission recordings, they'd accomplished this primarily because their human member had somehow negated every gravitational challenge the exercise was designed to present. "Pull up the climbing sequence," Commander Veltar instructed the Academy's tactical AI. The holographic display showed Marcus ascending 62 meters of vertical rock face in 2.1 standard gravity while carrying approximately 40 kilograms of equipment. His climbing technique was flawless, his movement efficiency impressive, and his overall performance equivalent to what professional military climbers might achieve in standard gravity conditions. "Analyze comparative performance data," Commander Veltar continued. Human performance exceeded expected parameters by factors ranging from 300% to 650%, the AI reported in its neutral voice. Gravitational stress indicators remained within acceptable ranges throughout the exercise. Mission efficiency improved over previous days' performance despite increased environmental challenges. Improved performance. Marcus was somehow getting better at handling extreme gravity rather than being worn down by it. Commander Veltar authorized a priority communication to Galactic Military Command. Some questions required answers that went beyond Academy training protocols. The answers came back within 6 hours, marked with security classifications that Commander Veltar hadn't seen since her combat deployment days. She read the classified human biological assessments twice before accepting their implications. That evening, she called Marcus to her office. "Cadet Marcus," she began carefully, "I've received additional information about human physiological capabilities. Information that wasn't included in your species' initial Academy application." Marcus sat at attention, but his relaxed posture suggested someone comfortable with military protocol rather than nervous about potential discipline. "Yes, ma'am. According to classified assessments, human baseline gravity tolerance is significantly higher than initially reported. Your species apparently adapted to gravitational fields that would be considered high-gravity environments by galactic standards." Marcus looked genuinely surprised. "Really? Earth always seemed pretty normal to us." "Earth measures 1.0 standard gravity only at sea level," Commander Veltar continued. "Gravitational variance across your planet ranges from 0.97 standard to 1.04 standard depending on geographic location and elevation. Your species evolved to function across this entire range without technological assistance." "Huh," Marcus said. "I never really thought about it that way." "Furthermore," Commander Veltar said, consulting her classified files, "human recreational activities routinely involve gravitational stresses equivalent to 1.5 to 2.0 standard gravity when factoring in equipment loads and physical exertion at various altitudes." Marcus brightened. "Oh, that makes sense. Mountain climbing, backpacking, that sort of thing. Yeah, we do that for fun." For fun. Commander Veltar set aside the classified files and studied the human sitting across from her desk. Cadet Marcus, tomorrow's final exercise will be conducted at 2.5 standard gravity. This represents the absolute limit of what the Academy considers survivable for most species. Are you prepared to participate? Yes, ma'am, Marcus replied without hesitation. Will it be similar terrain to today's exercise? More challenging, Commander Veltar said. Desert environment, extreme temperatures, minimal equipment loads, and emergency survival scenarios. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. Sounds like good training. Will Squad 7 be working together again? Commander Veltar glanced at the medical reports from today's exercise. Tweaky was in the repair bay having her exoskeleton completely rebuilt. Korath's powered armor required major maintenance after multiple system failures. Zix's Terra was undergoing extended medical monitoring for gravitational stress syndrome. Squad 7 will be reorganized, she said diplomatically. You'll be working with cadets from other species who have demonstrated exceptional gravitational tolerance. What she didn't mention was that these would be cadets from the galaxy's most extreme heavy world environments, wearing the most advanced environmental suits available, supported by experimental technology designed specifically for high-gravity operations. Marcus would be the only cadet participating without technological assistance. Looking forward to it, Marcus said. And ma'am, thanks for letting us work together these past 2 days. Squad 7 is a good team. Commander Veltar watched Marcus leave her office with the same casual stride he'd maintained throughout 2 days of exercises that had hospitalized dozens of other cadets. Tomorrow's exercise would definitively answer the questions surrounding human capabilities, one way or another. She just wasn't sure the Academy was prepared for the answers they might receive. The next morning, Marcus reported to the shuttle bay wearing the same basic field gear he'd carried throughout the previous exercises. Around him, 5 other cadets prepared for the mission using environmental suits that looked more like mechanical engineering projects than military equipment. These were representatives from the galaxy's most extreme heavy world civilizations, supported by technology that pushed the boundaries of what was considered possible. Final exercise objectives, Commander Veltar announced to the assembled team. Survival and extraction from hostile desert environment at 2.5 standard gravity. Mission duration 12 hours. Minimal equipment loads. Emergency conditions. Improvised shelter and navigation requirements. She paused, looking at Marcus. This exercise has a 40% historical failure rate. Medical teams are standing by. Marcus checked his basic equipment load one final time. No powered assistance, no advanced environmental suit, no specialized technology. Just a human being preparing for what the Academy considered the ultimate test of physical and mental endurance. Ready when you are, ma'am, Marcus said. 12 hours later, Marcus would return from the desert having carried 3 of his squad mates back to the extraction point after their environmental suits failed. He would complete the survival exercise while simultaneously conducting 3 separate rescue operations, navigating by improvised methods, and maintaining morale for a team that had expected to be carrying him. The Academy's final evaluation report would note that Marcus had performed better in 2.5 standard gravity than most cadets managed in standard gravity conditions. The report would also note that human capabilities appeared to improve with exposure to challenging gravitational environments rather than degrading, suggesting adaptation mechanisms that current galactic science couldn't explain. But none of that had happened yet. For now, Marcus was just a human cadet heading into the desert for what he assumed would be another good workout. Commander Veltar watched the shuttle disappear toward the exercise planet and realized that the Academy's understanding of what constituted extreme gravitational stress was about to be permanently revised. The galaxy had been measuring environmental challenges based on species that had evolved to their limitations. Humans, apparently, had evolved to exceed theirs.